My mother slapped me in the face during my engagement party, and a month later, she sued me because I refused to give my sister the money for her wedding. This was my family, but they were trying to destroy everything I had built over the years. My name is Sally Parks. I'm 30 years old and work as a graphic designer in a small town called Ridgefield. My life went on peacefully and predictably, but this evening something changed. It seemed a new, more significant chapter was beginning. I couldn't help but smile as I looked around the softly lit restaurant. Everything seemed perfect. Candles on the tables, soft background music, the aroma of fresh flowers in the air. Today was a special evening, our engagement. After 4 years together, Jason and I finally decided to take the next step. In just 4 months, we would be getting married. He stood next to me, tall, warm, familiar. His hand was gently resting on my waist. We met 4 years ago when he came to work in the creative department of the marketing agency where I was working at the time. We immediately connected. During a corporate trip, we started talking, and since then, everything seemed to fall into place on its own. Jason turned out to be kind, reliable, and smart. We built our lives around respect, trust, and common goals. That evening, we were surrounded by loved ones and friends, colleagues, family. I looked around the room and saw many familiar smiles. Jason's parents, old college friends, even distant relatives I hadn't seen in a long time. And of course, my family. Well, almost the whole family. My parents, Karen and Paul Parks, were sitting at a table near the stage. Their smiles looked slightly strained. My younger sister Kelly was lazily scrolling through her phone, as if she was there against her will. Judging by her habit of losing gadgets, it was probably her 3rd one this year. We were never particularly close, and over the years, the distance between us only grew. But I tried to shrug off the tension. Tonight wasn't about old grievances, but about love, devotion, and a new chapter in our lives. Or so I thought. Mom stood up and gently tapped her spoon against a glass. A ringing sound spread through the room, and conversations died down. All eyes turned to her. "May I have your attention for a moment?" she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "First of all, I want to congratulate my wonderful daughter Sally and her remarkable fiancé Jason. May your marriage be filled with love, joy, and happiness." Applause erupted, and someone raised a glass. Jason squeezed my hand under the table. I smiled gratefully at him. But then Mom continued. Her voice became steadier and colder. "I also have an important announcement," she said, putting the glass down on the table. "After discussing it with Paul, we have decided to give Sally's wedding fund of $60,000 to Kelly." The room fell into dead silence. I blinked, not immediately believing what I heard, and gave a small laugh, thinking it was a joke. "Mom, that's funny." I tried to stay calm. "But that's my money. I'm not giving it away." Karen's smile disappeared instantly, her face turned harsh. "This isn't a joke, Sally," she said sharply. "Your sister is getting married just a few months later. She needs it more." A wave of heat swept through my body. "What are you saying? It's my money. You and Dad gave it to me. It's in my account." "Darling," she began in a different tone. "You have a good job, and Jason does too. But Kelly and her fiancé, they have difficulties. She deserves a beautiful wedding too." My hands trembled. I stood up, trying to compose myself. "We've already planned the wedding with this money. We were careful not to spend too much, even planning to use part for the down payment on a house. You can't just take it away." Kelly suddenly pushed her chair back and jumped up. Her drink almost spilled. "Don't be so selfish, Sally," she snapped. "You could have offered to share long ago. You don't need it as much as I do." I turned to her, clenching my jaw. "It's not about need, Kelly. It's about fairness. I planned everything. You mismanaged your finances and now want me to just give you what's mine." "She lives simply," Mom barked. "She doesn't have so much. Her fiancé is trying his best, but you've always had more." "Because I've always worked harder," I retorted, crossing my arms over my chest. "I follow the rules. I saved. I planned. And I don't care. I'm not giving you my money," I said calmly but firmly. Karen's face flared red. The tension in the room became nearly unbearable. Jason gently laid his hand on mine, but I wasn't going to back down. And then, in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, my mother stepped forward and slapped me hard across the face. The slap sounded like a gunshot, echoing through the restaurant. My head whipped to the side, my cheek instantly flaring with pain, and tears filled my eyes, not just from the blow, but from the shock. I slowly turned my head back to my mother and without raising my voice said, "You can't hit me just because I said no." Someone at the neighboring table took a loud breath, and then I heard the calm voice of the waiter at the counter talking on the phone. "Yes, hello. I need to report an assault. It just happened at Ridgewood Bistro." Minutes later, sirens wailed in the distance. They were approaching. People in the restaurant remained seated. Some glanced at me with worry, some pretended to focus on their plates. I stood rooted, trying to comprehend what had just happened. My cheek throbbed with pain, but it was the sting of betrayal that hurt the most. Jason still stood by, his jaw tense. My father silently led Karen aside, obviously trying to calm her. A few moments later, 2 uniformed police officers entered the dining area. One of them approached our table. "Were you the victim of the assault?" he asked. I nodded silently. The waiter confirmed he had witnessed the slap and described what happened. Karen tried to defend herself, saying it was a family matter, but the officer calmly explained that a public assault remains a crime regardless of the relationship. "Do you wish to file a report?" they asked me. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady. "Yes, I'm filing a report." The police arrested Karen right there in the restaurant. As they led her away in handcuffs, I noticed Kelly looking at me with shock and almost contempt, as if I was a criminal simply for defending myself. My father silently followed them out. The restaurant was engulfed in tense silence. No one knew what to do. Applaud, cry, or just leave. But Jason stayed by my side, holding my hand, not letting go for even a second. Later that evening, after speaking to a lawyer, I officially filed the report and pressed charges. Karen was released on bail the next day, but the case was initiated. A few weeks later, the court hearing took place. This time it wasn't about money, but about the slap. Karen stood before the judge. Witness testimonies and surveillance footage were reviewed. The evidence was clear. She was found guilty of the offense and sentenced to a $2,000 fine, mandatory anger management classes, and 6 months probation. She got lucky. The judge replaced actual incarceration with 30 days of conditional custody. I sat in the courtroom, observing as my mother avoided my gaze. When the judge asked if I had anything to add, I stood up, looked Karen straight in the eyes, and said, "I never expected this from my mother, but no one is above the law." I hoped everything would settle after the court, but I was wrong. The slap and arrest were just the beginning. Karen stopped contacting me, Kelly blocked me in all messengers, and my father chose silence. Yet the real storm was only approaching. 3 weeks after the engagement party, I returned home and found a thick envelope in the mailbox. The kind that makes your stomach drop. It was from the law firm Sorcia. Inside was an official notification. My parents were suing me, demanding control over the $60,000 fund. They claimed that the money was intended solely for college tuition and that I used it for other purposes. At first, I even laughed at the absurdity of what was happening. The money legally belonged to me. The fund was created when I was 17, and I gained full control over it at 19. Both Mom and Dad said then that Kelly and I could manage the funds as we saw fit when we were adults. The difference was, I was prudent, cautious, and always planned ahead. Part of my funds went to education at State University, the rest was covered by scholarships. I let the account grow. Kelly chose a different path. She enrolled in an expensive private college, but dropped out after 2.5 years. The remainder of her funds was invested in a small business venture, which went bankrupt in just 7 months. She spent her savings on flashy branding, an expensive photo shoot, and even a launch party with rented influencers to create buzz. When everything fell apart, she was left with just a luxury car bought impulsively in the moment when she still believed in her quick success. And now that her money was gone, she and my parents decided it was my turn. I hired a lawyer, Amanda Lane, calm, confident, with a sharp mind. After reviewing all the documents, she looked at me and calmly said, "They have no case. This account was gifted to you. There are no legal restrictions on its use. Even if there was a verbal agreement, it holds no weight in court." I felt relief but also anger. "Then why all this?" I asked. Amanda shrugged. "Some people would rather drag you down than admit their mistakes, especially if they need to protect someone else." And at that moment, I realized it was not just a court case. It was my life in miniature. A life where favoritism, denial, and double standards were the norm. My mother was trying not just to take my money, but to cover Kelly's failure and turn me into a payment terminal. The following months were some of the most draining of my life. The legal proceedings consumed everything: time, energy, attention. I was buried under emails, applications, disclosure requests, endless pre-trials. Every time I walked into court and saw my parents sitting beside Kelly, avoiding my gaze, I remembered, this wasn't just a conflict, it was betrayal. At the hearings, Kelly carried herself with smug confidence, as if she had no doubt she would secure the money I had defended for years. At one particularly tense session, she stood up and stated to the court that the fund was always intended strictly for college tuition. Amanda rose from her seat and calmly asked her a question. "Did you use all your funds solely for educational purposes?" Kelly hesitated. "Well, not all," she mumbled. Amanda nodded. "Actually, you dropped out of college and spent the remaining money on starting a business and buying an expensive car, correct?" Kelly stiffened. "It doesn't matter." "It does," Amanda said calmly but firmly. "If there were strict limitations on the use of the fund, why were you allowed to spend it on something else without objections?" Kelly had no answer. I sat silently, my heart racing, but outwardly remained calm. Everything was coming out. Their bias, their attempts to cover up Kelly's failures, their desire to punish me for being different. Outside the court, Jason was my pillar of support. He attended every hearing, held my hand, whispered that everything would be okay. His support helped me not to give up. even when everything was falling apart. The legal costs, exhaustion, emotional burnout. Everything we planned for our wedding had to be postponed. I lost sleep, occasionally crying in the middle of the night, sometimes between meetings at work. But I did not give up because this case was not just about money. It was about justice, about being heard, about being respected, about finally holding my family accountable. When it seemed things couldn't get worse, they went even further. One day, while browsing through wedding planner lists, I received a call from my cousin Jessica. "Sally, I just wanted to say I'm sorry the wedding got canceled," she said quietly. I gasped. "What do you mean?" "The wedding isn't canceled." There was a pause. Then Jessica awkwardly said, "Your mom called me last week. Said you and Jason broke up because he cheated on you." My jaw dropped. Over the next hour, I received 3 more calls from confused friends and distant relatives, all asking the same question. Why was the wedding canceled? Some even sent fake emails purportedly from me, claiming the event was off. I checked my email. Nothing in the spam folder. This only meant one thing. Someone had created a fake address posing as me. I was shocked, and of course the first person I thought of was Kelly. I had no direct evidence, but the picture was clear. This was no longer just lawsuits, it was personal. Sabotage. I called my Aunt Linda, my mom's sister, one of the few relatives who remained neutral. "I was going to call you," she sighed. "Your mom. She's telling everyone you're lying about Jason, that you're unstable and there was never supposed to be a wedding." I leaned weakly against the wall. "Why is she doing this?" I whispered. "Because she's protecting Kelly," Aunt Linda replied quietly. "She always protected her, even when Kelly didn't deserve it. I love Kelly, but your mom spoils her. And now she's smearing you to make her younger daughter look more innocent." This betrayal hurt deeper than any courtroom accusations. My own mother was trying to ruin my reputation for Kelly's sympathy. That evening, Jason came home. He immediately noticed my expression. "What happened?" I showed him screenshots of the fake emails and told him what Jessica said. He was angry but not surprised. "Your sister just contacted me too," he added grimly. "Said she had proof you were cheating on me. Sent photos." I looked at him in horror. He pulled out his phone and showed several grotesquely photoshopped images. A woman with my face pasted onto a different body, hugging some unfamiliar man. It was clumsy and obviously fake, yet profoundly disgusting. Jason nodded. "Of course. I didn't believe it, but my parents saw it too. Your family is trying to destroy everything we're building." And then we decided to act. We hired professional security for the wedding, providing photos of Karen, Paul, and Kelly to those who were not to be let in. I hated that it had come to this, but was determined not to let them ruin anything else. On the wedding day, I awoke feeling a strange mix of excitement and fear. Jason and I chose a cozy open venue near Ridgefield, not extravagant, but very elegant and personal. White chairs were arranged in the grassy garden, facing a wooden arch decorated with flowers. I stood in the bridal suite adjusting my veil as guests began to arrive. But my nerves weren't from the vows. It was from what might happen next. 2 security guards stood at the entrance. They were given clear instructions, not to let any family members inside. Jason and I had discussed everything in detail, but I still couldn't relax. About an hour and 15 minutes in, a knock came at the door of the bridal suite. One of the security guards entered, lowering his voice. "Miss Parks," he said cautiously, "We just detained a young woman trying to sneak in through the service entrance. She resembles the picture you gave us. It's your sister Kelly." My heart raced. "Is she alone?" I asked. "Yes, but with a large bag." We opened it and found a large can of red paint. I froze. The wedding dress, the venue, the guests. She was going to ruin everything. Anger, pain, and disbelief fought for space in my chest. "Do you want to file a report?" the guard asked. "We can call the local sheriff right now." I hesitated. After all her actions, I had more than enough reason to contact the police again. But this was my day. My wedding day. I had already lost too much because of their chaos. "No," I finally said firmly. "Just make sure she's taken off the premises and keep her out." "Did my parents try to get inside?" I asked. He nodded and left. I sank onto the nearby stool, trying hard not to cry. My best friend Jessica knelt beside me. "What happened?" she whispered. I looked at her, my voice barely holding. "Kelly tried to sneak in with a can of paint. She was going to ruin everything." Jessica's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed with anger. "You realize what this means?" she said firmly. "It means you've won. They couldn't stop your happiness, so tried to destroy it. But you stopped them. You stood strong. Now go and marry the man who stood by you all this time. You deserve every minute of this day." I wiped away the tears, took a deep breath, and stood up. My Uncle Michael, my father's brother, led me to the altar. As I stepped into the garden, I saw Jason standing under the arch. Our eyes met, and in that moment, everything else disappeared. Betrayal, court battles, tears, pain. It all lost meaning. Today was a day of love. The ceremony was sincere and beautiful. We exchanged vows filled with words about devotion, strength, and partnership. When the officiant announced us as husband and wife, the guests erupted in applause. For the first time in many months, I felt a weight lift from my soul. The reception was exactly as we had dreamed. Music, laughter, heartfelt speeches from those who stood by us through the toughest times. Jessica made a toast that brought tears to my eyes, but they were quiet, proud tears. The kind shed when you've weathered a storm and found peace at its edge. Jason and I danced, ate, celebrated as if nothing else in the world existed. And truthfully, nothing else did. Almost every guest remarked how beautifully it had been arranged, how happy we looked, how the entire day was filled with genuine love. Some heard snippets of the drama, but respectfully remained silent. During dinner, one aunt leaned in and whispered to me, "I'm so proud of you for not backing down." Those words stayed with me long after the cake was cut and the final song played. When night fell, Jason and I slipped under the starlit sky, running hand in hand through a shower of rice thrown by our friends. We got into the car waiting at the curb and drove off. We both smiled like children. I turned back for a second and looked at the twinkling lights of the venue. My sister had tried to ruin this moment, but she didn't succeed. No one did. Our honeymoon was pure bliss. 3 peaceful weeks in a quiet beach town far from Ridgefield. No courts, no scandals. Just sun, sea, and the man I loved. I allowed myself to breathe, truly breathe, for the first time in what seemed like forever. When we returned home, I felt ready to move forward. We focused on settling into our apartment, planning for the future, and leaving the past behind. A few weeks later, I bumped into my cousin Rachel in the grocery store. After a brief hug, she asked, "Have you heard about Kelly's wedding?" I raised an eyebrow. "We don't really talk," I replied. "Your parents took out a loan to pay for everything," she said. "The wedding's at the Grandardin Hotel, a super luxurious venue. They're even bringing a chef in from another state. It's quite a show." I involuntarily smirked. Of course, they would set everything at the highest level for Kelly, even if it meant going into debt. "Would you go if she invited you?" Rachel asked cautiously. She tried to ruin my wedding with a can of paint. I replied calmly but firmly. "So no, I'm not going." And strangely enough, the invitation never came. Later, I heard from family conversations that several relatives declined Kelly's wedding invitation. Some out of discomfort, some out of principle. Some politely, others very loudly. In any case, the shine began to fade, both for Kelly and for my parents. Jason and I used the $60,000 exactly as planned. We had our dream wedding, modest, cozy, and filled with love. The remaining funds went toward the down payment on a lovely apartment near the city. With our combined incomes, the mortgage was quite achievable, and for the first time in our lives, we were building capital instead of just spending money on rent. Our home was small, but it was ours. Built not on someone's favor, but on tough decisions, perseverance, and the shared belief in a better future. Life after the wedding fell into a rhythm I hadn't even realized I needed. We spent weekends decorating our cozy apartment. Nothing fancy, just shelves, the sofa we'd saved for, and walls adorned with photos from our wedding and trips. One Saturday afternoon, while setting up the guest room, Jason laughed, struggling with an IKEA dresser. "Who do you think will be our first overnight guest?" I froze with a screwdriver in hand. For a moment, my thoughts flew to my parents. Perhaps in some distant version of reality they would apologize. Maybe Kelly would mature and admit her mistakes. But deep down, I knew it was a fantasy. "Whoever it is," I finally said, smiling softly, "will be someone who truly cares about us." The holidays passed with no calls, no messages, no invitations. At first, it stung. That year, my birthday was quiet, and for the first time in my life, I didn't hear congratulations from Mom. But then I recalled the slap, the lawsuit, the lies, the paint, the fake photos, and the attempt to destroy something pure simply out of envy. And pain was replaced by clarity. Sometimes Jason would ask if I thought there would ever be peace between me and my family. "Maybe someday," I would answer honestly. "But if it ever happens, an apology alone won't be enough. It will require changes. I don't think it will happen soon." Kelly's wedding eventually took place. From what I heard, there were champagne fountains, a hired string quartet, and designer dresses for the bridesmaids. But several important relatives missed the ceremony. They felt uneasy about how my parents and sister had treated me. The worst part was that the huge loan taken out by Paul and Karen became known to everyone. They poured everything into this one event, hoping to create the illusion that the past year hadn't happened. But it did, and people remembered. As Jason and I grew stronger together, I realized one important truth. Family isn't just those you share blood with. It's those who respect your boundaries, celebrate your successes, and support your peace. Yes, I lost a lot, but I gained a home, a husband who was always there, friends and distant relatives who saw the truth and didn't hesitate. And perhaps most importantly, I remained true to myself. I didn't crumble. I didn't give up. I defended what I had built. Not out of greed, but out of self-respect. That $60,000 helped us buy a future and create a homey comfort. But more than anything, it gave us freedom. Freedom from manipulation, freedom from guilt, freedom from a family for whom love was conditional upon obedience. I stood my ground and triumphed not only in court, but in life. Did you like the story? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next interesting story. See you tomorrow.